We're going to delve into the Reckitt graduate program and understand how Shelleny managed to implement a virtual graduate program during 2021 as well as 2022. Shelleny, just to give some background on Shelleny, she's the Talent and Development Manager at Reckitt South Africa. She has over 19 years of HR experience in sectors including retail, banking, financial services, agriculture, telecommunications, and the FMCG industry. She's a chartered HR professional with the SA Board of People Practices, a member of the Institute of Directors SA, and has a master's degree in HR management. So welcome, Shelleny. You're welcome to put your camera on. And
morning, Tanya.
Morning. Thank you so much for joining us. I know that you are struggling a bit with flu. I'm glad to see that your voice is back. So thank you so much for your commitment and for attending today's session.
Well, thank you for having me, and good morning to everybody who's joined the call.
Thanks. We collaborated with Reckitt in 2021 to integrate our learner wellness program. And, the sessions that you included in your run side by side with your graduate program was our financial literacy, our life coaching, and our KPI support sessions. So just to understand, Shelleny, in 2020, we were all thrust into a pandemic, into a lockdown that was new to everyone. We all were forced to work remotely and to navigate this strange new environment. Reckitt closed their offices on the 26th of March with all businesses within South Africa. And today, you've not actually returned completely to the office. You are still majority working remotely. Please walk us through this. How did you actually go through the process of advertising, recruiting, selecting, and shortlisting graduates to place on your graduate program? I know you had over thousands of applications that have come in, and you had to shortlist down to 40 and then place 9 graduates. Please walk us through how you did this virtually.
Okay, so thanks, Tanya. So I think when it comes to the recruitment process, it's quite important to remember that as much as Reckitt was looking for the best graduate talent to bring into our business, this process is also an opportunity for the company to showcase Reckitt, what our purpose is, and why these graduates who were being, courted and looked at by many other companies, why would they want to choose Reckitt as the place to start their careers? And a virtual setting, added a dimension of complexity in how to best connect with and engage the graduate candidates, while also ensuring that we gave them this exceptional candidate experience throughout the recruitment process. So planning for a recruitment process that suddenly had to happen, 100% virtually involved taking a few steps back and understanding our end-to-end global recruiting process and engaging the various stakeholders within Reckitt to understand which elements could already be easily done online and which of those we had to adapt, away from a face-to-face environment into a virtual setting. So advertising, shortlisting, psychometric assessments, as part of our global process, all of those are online. So those were all quick wins.
Okay.
The challenge came in when we looked at the assessment center and the interviews. And the key there really was collaborating with leaders from across Reckitt South Africa and really preparing them for the change over to a virtual recruitment process. So as much as a graduate who's sitting in front of our leaders is quite nervous to be interviewed and to be assessed, it also was quite scary for our leaders to go out and engage graduates over a screen, because they were used to, being face-to-face, meeting the graduate in person in a room, doing an assessment center live and in person. And now suddenly I'm saying to them, we expect you to come in, engage and showcase our business, but also be able to make a good decision in terms of which of these graduates will make an offer to. So I think what was key here was I did briefing sessions with all of the leaders across the business who would be supporting and involved in the recruitment process, and equip them with toolkits that took the virtual environment into account and would help them to prepare for the assessment center and for the upcoming interviews. So we hosted the assessment center, as you said, with the 40 shortlisted graduates, and we used Microsoft Teams, which is the platform that Reckitt uses quite widely for all meetings and communications virtually. And we actually had 40 graduates as well as 50 leaders from across the South Africa business in the call for the one-day assessment center. And we also had the presence of our executive leadership team.
I remember that day.
Yeah, you were there with us. Yeah,
It
observing.
was
So it
over.
was,
I think there was close to 90 people in that session, and but you guys ran it so effectively. You had breakaway rooms where the
yes.
grads could actually separate and discuss how they can present a particular project, or present to the panel of managers that they needed to engage with. So it was quite a massive event, but very successful.
Yeah, I think you'll recall we had a hiccup with technology quite early when we first attempted the breakout room. This was before Teams actually opened up the very, nicely working breakout functionality. So we had to do it manually. And the plan A didn't work. And we swiftly moved to plan B. Unfortunately, I had, some alumni grads and our IT team in the background helping to support the switch over. And I think, yeah, it worked quite well in terms of splitting the managers from across Reckitt as well as the 40 grads into those breakout areas so that we could still have observed via camera assessment preparations and presentations that could be scored by the leaders that were, required to actually be part of this process and to identify the grads we make offer to. I think as part of showcasing Reckitt to the graduates and, enticing them to want to start their careers with us, we designed the assessment exercises in a way that built on our values. And we also had a commercial business case that used our flagship brands, Dettol and Nurofen. So I think that really, brought the purpose and the sense of who Reckitt is quite strongly, even though we are doing it over a screen. And it helped to integrate the graduates and entice them to want to join Reckitt. Interviews, again, we use MS Teams, and offers were extended online via our recruitment process. So I think looking back on it, the biggest challenge to a virtual setup was the assessment center and interview process, but the success levers were preparing our leaders as well as communicating with the grads quite upfront in terms of what to expect on the day, as well as having, plan B and plan C for when technology would decide to have a hiccup or two. But I think overall it went very well, and we were able to come down to the final 9 that joined our graduate program.
Awesome. And I think the one key thing that you mentioned there is preparing them before the session, whether you're a manager or a graduate that is entering into this new space. Communication is always key, and just getting them to understand what are you embarking on and what is expected of you. I think we often fall short of that when we bring new learners into the work environment, is that we only focus on their qualification and maybe what they're expected to do in the company, but there's so much more that goes together with that. And we have to hold their hands throughout the process. I think the support for graduates coming into organizations are vital for their development and for the success of the program. And I must say, Reckitt has done that really well. I engage with your grads and your managers on a monthly basis, and the support that comes from the managers is phenomenal, and more so because it's all still being done remotely. Now, I want to understand, how did you create the hype and keep the engagement throughout the graduate program? So I know you had a 6-week induction, which was also a virtual induction for the graduates, but how did you keep them engaged through the process and through the entire year? A lot of them have moved into their second year. Well, actually, all of them have moved into their second year now, and new graduates brought on during 2022. But how do you keep them engaged throughout this time working remotely?
Yeah, so again, as you rightfully said, that creating engagement, excitement, and a bit of hype is a particular challenge within this fully virtual format. And to ensure that we did have the right level of engagement, excitement about being part of the business, I think firstly, during our 6 weeks induction, we put in certain elements that were geared towards creating engagement and making sure that graduates coming in receive a very warm welcome into the business. So a couple of things that we did was, yes, we couldn't see the grad face to face, but we ensured that each graduate received welcome hampers to the business that was delivered to them via courier. It had a personalized note from our leadership team welcoming them to the business, and it had some items that would help them, settle into the virtual world of work. So we had like Bluetooth headsets, etc., that were sent out to them to help them get into the virtual way of working a bit easier in the early days. Also, I think where we engaged grads was when we had our teams coming throughout the induction process, It wasn't just, someone talking to you and the graduate passively sitting and listening throughout the 6 weeks, because that would be really, difficult and quite tedious, and you can really drain the energy by doing that. What we built in, and here we really had to rely on the energy and creativity of our teams from within Reckitt that were working with the grads. We built in what we call mini assignments, so that when a team engaged the grads and told them this is what our business does and what we do on the day-to-day and how it affects our bottom line, the grads were then given a mini assignment to work on something and present it back. So for example, when our e-commerce and digital marketing team worked with the grads, the mini assignment they gave them was, can you do a digital advert for Dettol to go on to Takealot? And our in-house graphic designer and e-commerce specialist would actually help the grads put together the advert, let them present it back, and then tell them, whether it met the brief in terms of how it's done normally in Reckitt and what the important parts were to ensure that we were, advertising our products online through Takealot in the right way. And I think it not only tested the learning, but made it a bit more fun as well. Instead of just being told this is how we do it, you're actually getting immersed as a grad quite early on during induction, working as a team and doing these things. So I think that's one of the good examples of the mini assignments to create a bit more, immersive sort of induction and ensuring that people or the grads are actually doing something that's quite engaging. Another element that helped to ramp up the engagement levels was, from the beginning, we started off with ensuring we had coaching circles for our grads, and we contacted also a young talent career coach. And she was brought in so that on a weekly basis, during that first 6 weeks induction, she would work with the grads in these coaching circles on important topics that would help them be immersed into the world of Reckitt, but also be engaged in a way that will enable them to also settle in as a new employee in a corporate setting, but also take their journeys forward. So the coaching circles were quite effective, although it was done virtually. And we had topics like how to jumpstart your career, how to work on your personal branding, how to have effective communication and manage crucial conversations as you go into the world of Reckitt. How do you own your growth and future-proof yourself? And I think the purpose of these coaching circles really was to support the grads on the transition from university students into their first corporate jobs. And it also created the safe and, again, engaging environment where they could speak with and learn from each other. And they had an expert coach at their disposal to guide the conversation and give them, that coaching and mentoring that they needed as young professionals. But it also helped them to start gelling together as a network. And you see our grads, 2021, 2022, the group of grads that we have are a very strong knit unit, because they very early on started working on team projects, started going into coaching circles. It amped up the engagement while they were all sitting in their various homes, across the country, but it still allowed us to engage them quite well. And I think the final element I'll touch on under engagement is we sent out the challenge to our business that, yes, the graduate program is a flagship program, but the challenge we put to each of our commercial functions, and where we leverage off the natural competitiveness of Reckitt people, is we said to them, on a Friday, we're going to call it Functional Fridays, with the emphasis being on the fun element. Each of the commercial functions would have to spend the day with the grads, again, virtually, and onboard them to what their function does. But the trick was to do it in a very engaging and fun way. And to amp up that natural competition and to make it more interesting for the guys internally that we're meeting with the grads, we said to the grads, it's your chance to now rate all of them and score them each week. And whichever function gets the highest score wins a prize. And they actually, won like a sponsored lunch, etc. So, that was a way to make it a bit more fun, make sure the teams are bringing their best, most engaging selves to the sessions. And I think it worked really well. And I can promise you the scoring was so high that we had less than a 0.1 difference between the first and second highest scoring team. So I think it worked really well to give everybody. So those are some of the things that we did to engage the graduates throughout this virtual experience that they've had with us.
No, I think, and thank you for that. It's really, I see the difference, because when I engage with the managers and the graduates on a monthly basis, I can see the cohesive and environment and the support that the managers have with that they provide to the graduates, and how comfortable the graduates are in obtaining support and asking for support, whether it's from the manager or from the team members. And I also just would like to note that, you know, with the graduate intake of 9 graduates last year, all 9 has now gone permanent.
Hmm.
100%.
All 9 have gone permanent, and I think it's one of the success measures that we have for the program. And it's showing us that this holistic support for the whole graduate is yielding the results we're looking for. So within 5 months, the first graduate was made permanent, which is, you know, a very quick turnaround. And yes, like you said, in less than the 2 years, we've placed all 9 permanently, and we've actually started placing from our second year grads. So the ones that started with us this year, we're starting to look at permanent roles for them as well. So you can see this program is really yielding the results, and it is gearing us towards our ultimate purpose of fast tracking careers and converting graduate talent into leadership roles within 3 to 5 years.
Yes, and I think what I also really enjoyed seeing this year with the new first year intake is that there's some graduates that were on the program last year that went permanent who are now supporting the new graduates in this year. So it really is, it's awesome to see that you know, that whole cycle just going through, and you know, they're paying it forward again to the new graduates that are coming in. So last question is, when we look at our learner wellness program, what influenced your decision to choose financial literacy, our life coaching sessions, and our logbook KPI sessions?
So I'm really a firm believer in growing the whole graduate, and you know, being a graduate on the program with Reckitt and building a career is just one dimension of what makes up the whole person. Each graduate is a sibling, a son or a daughter, maybe a partner in a relationship. There's so many different dimensions that makes up the whole person. And if you look at grads, and you touched on it with learners as well, coming into our program, many, if not all of our graduates are earning their first salary and seeing a pay slip for the first time. Some are the first generation university graduates who are now also suddenly the breadwinners in their homes. So the whole graduate is this amazing layered individual. And through this program, the aim really was to support and develop each graduate holistically during the program. And that led to the selection of the elements that we partnered with WSDP on. So firstly, you know, graduates in South Africa are not exposed to corporates during their tertiary studies. So while they're at university, you know, you don't see them going into corporate businesses and getting that internship and exposure unless they do so in their private capacity. So there's quite a large gap or transition that they have to go through and that they experience when they go from being university students to being appointed into a graduate program and starting their first jobs in a corporate setting. And again, as I mentioned, Reckitt's graduate program is designed to fast track the careers of this young talent so that we can move them into leadership roles within 3 to 5 years. So this accelerated career path means that expectations are high for graduates post the induction period. We're looking very closely at their performance and behaviors throughout the program in order to make decisions on when to place them in permanent roles. So given this, you know, whole graduate view, the demands of the program that we have in order to fast track their careers, these elements were carefully selected. So the KPI support sessions were very important for ensuring that all graduates had a consistent experience and clear understanding of performance and behavioral expectations during the course of the program. Also, these sessions ensure that graduates were given the right type and level of exposure and meaningful work on the day-to-day that would develop and grow them to move into permanent roles. And we've seen all 9 from 2021 have moved into permanent roles already, and to be set up to take on that accelerated career path towards being a leader in Reckitt. Now, we achieve these great success indicators through the monthly meetings supported by a project manager from WSDP, where the line manager and graduates would meet, sign off on KPIs, deliverables, and what exposure and learning took place for the month prior. If you look at financial literacy, I think it's really important because, again, these graduates are receiving their first salary, looking at a pay slip for the first time, and coming into a Reckitt on the grad program. It's a salary plus benefits, including pension and medical aids. So it's really important for them to understand, you know, what does this pay slip mean? And, you know, I always have this quick story with a previous employer that had a massive large-scale graduate program that took on more than 100 grads a year. And I think I told you this, Tanya, you know, in the 1 year when the grads came in, one day I was walking through the employee parking lot and there was a whole bunch of brand new BMWs and Audis parked there. And so we had the conversation around, who are all these people that are buying these things? And then the graduate manager says, actually, all our grads have bought those cars. Right. And, that was like the success measure to say to their families, I've gone to university, I've got a degree, and look at me now, I'm driving a BMW. But the sad reality was, because there wasn't this financial literacy component in the program, a year later, most, if not all of those vehicles had to be returned to the financial, institutions that were backing them, and that gave them these very, high cost finances to actually that they had to pay back. So that stuck with me, and I made it, a big decision, and it's something that I kept close to heart, that when we're bringing in graduates, we have to equip them from day one with financial literacy and knowledge. We have to help them to make sound financial decisions, and to make sure that they are building their personal wealth, and that they can go on as time goes on and they build their careers to build the intergenerational wealth. That's where the power is. So I think that's what informed the financial literacy part of it. And I wish it was things that I was exposed to when I first started my career. It makes a huge difference knowing these things. And then finally, in terms of the wellness component and the brilliant work that was done by Dr. Dell with our grads, once they go through the 6 weeks induction, the expectation in terms of KPIs and deliverables at Reckitt is quite high, and the pressure is quite, serious in terms of meeting expectation for our grads. Additionally, there's lots of life transitions happening. A number of our grads relocated to Gauteng for the opportunity. So for the first time, they were living on their own, away from family support, in a new environment, compounded by the fact that you're under lockdown conditions. So you're stuck in a new place, indoors by yourself a lot of the time. And, all of these sort of life pressures, if I can call it like that, does impact on the graduate's ability to also take on the opportunity and make the most of the graduate program. And that's why I felt that the life coaching element with Dr. Dell was a key component to help them transition through these massive life transitions, and to help our grads to create these lifelong habits that will enable them to navigate their careers, manage their personal levels of stress, and to be set up for success going forward. So those are some of the reasons why we chose these elements. And again, the success measures are there, and it's clearly working for our grads.
Thanks, Shelleny. Thank you so much for that insightful discussion and just explaining how you managed to do that virtually.